The Millionaire'S blind kids were dumped, until a maid's shocking act changed everything forever. In the shadowy corners of Silver Oak Manor, an opulent estate known for both its glittering events and eerie secrets, two blind children, wrapped in their world of silence, sat alone. No one noticed them, not really. They were invisible under the shimmer of wealth, cast away like forgotten toys. The whispers that followed them were laced with misunderstanding, pity churned into laughter, and the tepid warmth of exclusion. Their white canes carved through the heavy silence as they navigated the grand hall, almost like ghosts haunting their former lives. Their father, a ruthless billionaire, rarely acknowledged their presence, consumed instead by the hunt for prestige and fortune. His coldness was suffocating, but the real shock lay not in his apathy, but in the fact that he had abandoned them here, in this palace of dreams that felt more like a prison. No companionship, no love, just the empty echoes of a mansion that once thrummed with laughter, now reduced to a chilling solitude. Just when it seemed like their story would dissolve into the echoes, a figure emerged from the shadows, a maid with tired eyes but a fire igniting in her heart. Maria had always watched the children through a lens of compassion. Every day, the weight of their isolation pressed down on her like a heavy blanket. Today, she couldn't ignore it any longer. She felt a compulsion stirring within her, a whisper that grew louder, urging her to act, to change their fate. She set her mind to concocting a plan, but this would require courage. Could she dance on the razor's edge of that privileged existence without losing herself? Her heart raced at the thought. The tension sparked like static in the air, crackling through her fingertips. Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As Maria gathered her courage, she could almost hear the whispers draft through the grand halls. What is she planning? The very idea made her pulse quicken. The children needed her, and she felt the hot sting of purpose. What if she didn't just change their lives? What if she could alter the way their father viewed them? The room seemed to buzz with raw possibilities, as if the walls held their breath alongside her. Escaping for the children had never been an option, but now she pondered, what if she offered them something he couldn't deny, a reason to love them? The night hung heavy with uncertainty, shadows dancing in the corners. As Maria stepped closer to the children, her breath caught. With trembling hands, she corrected her apron, ready to unveil a secret that could shake the very foundations of Silver Oak Manor. But would it be enough to change their fate, or would it ignite a storm no one could control? Just as Maria approached, a soft sound broke the stillness. The distant echo of boisterous laughter from outside spilled into the manor. It was a stark contrast, highlighting the children's silence. Her heart sank momentarily. How could a place meant for celebration and joy be so hollow at its core? Maria knelt near the children, deliberately lowering her voice to a soothing whisper. Do you remember the stories I told you? Her words were met with slight nods, the children's faces painting sorrowful images of longing for connection. Tonight, we will create a different story. Inspiration surged through her, a quiet blaze igniting in the darkness of despair. But as the thoughts rushed through her mind, she realized time was against them. The manor was both a sanctuary and a cage, and the clock was ticking. Sweat formed on her brow as she scanned the grand hallway. She had considered this a simple act of kindness, but now realized it was a high-stakes battle. Where would she even begin? The children's condition was not just a physical barrier, it was a convoluted web of social and emotional detachment. Their father's heart was not just closed, it was locked away behind layers of power and indifference. Suddenly, a faint tapping sounded, bringing her back to the present. It was a secondary voice, the sound of her own heartbeat quickening. She heard footsteps approaching, and dread washed over her. Maria?" It was the unmistakable voice of Mrs. Sinclair, the matriarch of the house and the children's main caretaker. Maria pressed her body against the wall, panic racing through her like wildfire. If discovered, all would be lost. The footsteps drew closer, echoing ominously through the hallway. She couldn't be caught. Her plan, their hope, would evaporate into thin air if Mrs. Sinclair saw her. Maria pressed her palms together, almost praying, as she listened intently. "What are you doing here?" Mrs. Sinclair's tone dripped with suspicion, penetrating Maria like a needle. "You know those children don't deserve your time." Feeling a surge of defiance, Maria forced her voice to hold steady. "They are deserving of everything, Mrs. Sinclair. They deserve love and joy, just like everyone else in this home." It was a gamble, an audacious move designed to ignite a spark, yet it could maybe backfire just as easily. There was a heavy pause, a strange silence hanging thick in the air. Mrs. Sinclair's response would determine everything. Maria held her breath, eyes wide and heart pounding, knowing she was at the precipice of something monumental. As the seconds dragged on, an expression flickered across Mrs. Sinclair's face, a crack in her haughty facade that hinted toward the possibility of empathy. "You think you can change anything here? You're a maid, not a miracle worker." The words hung in the air, sharp and looming, the resolve inside Maria intensified. "Maybe I'm more than that. Perhaps I'm the catalyst you never expected or wanted." With those words, she felt another shadow stretch behind her. Just then, the children turned their heads slightly, almost as if sensing the shift in energy, curious about the interchange happening in whispers. Maria realized this could become a pivotal moment, but what would happen next? Would Mrs. Sinclair strike back, triggering a countdown to disaster? Or could this be the moment that began to alter everything? The tension was palpable, as if everyone, including the very walls of Silver Oak Manor, was holding its breath. Could Maria turn the tide for the children, or would she become another victim in the billionaire's unforgiving world? The weight of her next words threatened to tilt the balance one way or another, and all eyes blind and seeing were fixed upon her. The night was heavy with possibility. And beneath the silence, a storm was brewing, ready to erupt the moment Maria dared to take the next step. The air throbbed with tension, thick and electric as Mrs. Sinclair's eyes narrowed. "You think you can just waltz in, little maid, and fix the years of neglect? You're naive." Maria's stomach twisted, but she held her ground, her voice rising gently amid the storm. "Don't you see? They're not just children of a millionaire, they're still children. They have hearts. Dreams." A flicker of desperation made her bold. "Why don't you leave them and your fears behind, just for tonight? This place can be something more. It can be alive." The weight of her words hung in the air, a stark challenge. Mrs. Sinclair glanced towards the children, their faces reflecting confusion and yearning. Maria's heart thudded. Maybe, just maybe, this was how every story had to begin, at the edge of fear. "Alive?" Mrs. Sinclair scoffed, bitterness curling her lips. "What would you know about being alive? You're just a cog in this machine." Her dismissive wave spurred a surge of anger within Maria. Yet, there was a fleeting hesitation on Mrs. Sinclair's face, a crack in her armor. Maria seized the moment, stepping forward slightly. "Then help me, Mrs. Sinclair. Help me bring back what's lost. There's still time tonight. Let us make it a night they'll remember." The walls seemed to breathe as she spoke. The manor, once a giant tomb of despair, now felt like it might stir. Even the children perked up, glimmers of hope lighting their wide eyes. But Mrs. Sinclair was still a wall of stone. Nothing could break through, could it? Suddenly, the laughter outside became more pronounced, a raucous cascade of joy taunting the hollow void inside the manor. A loud pop followed, a firecracker exploding in the distance, brightening the dark skies. The children flinched, instinctively huddling together, retreating into their own world, shutting out the possibility of joy. "Look what you've done," Mrs. Sinclair hissed, her voice turning sharp as arrows. You think you can just introduce chaos into their lives and everything will change? You're a fool. The surge of her anger almost felt like a slap, and yet, a flicker of something else passed over her face. Fear, perhaps? Maria dared to push just a little more. What if I'm not trying to cause chaos? What if I'm trying to make a haven for them? A place away from the weight of the world. Mrs. Sinclair glared, but uncertainty clouded her steely demeanor. It was a crack worth exploiting. In your heart, you know they're trapped, Mrs. Sinclair. You can't win against what this place has become. It can change, but we have to fight for them. Silence stretched out once more. Maria could hear the distant sounds growing louder, the warmth of laughter creeping deeper into the chilly halls. The larger family gathering was just outside, celebrating without care. Meanwhile, the children within longed for scraps of affection like rats begging for crumbs. Suddenly, Mrs. Sinclair's gaze softened for a split second. Just the slightest change, but it was there. You want to fight? She challenged, her tone flattening, though an infinitesimal crack remained. Let us see if you can really do it. Fire surged through Maria, igniting the fierce determination hidden beneath her fear. I want to just do it, I'll make it happen. Just give me a chance. But would Mrs. Sinclair truly let her? As she eyed the matriarch, a sudden noise erupted, breaking the fragile moment. The echo of breaking glass resonated from the back of the manor, piercing through like a knife. Maria's pulse raced, dread creeping back into her chest. What was that? She whispered, dread pooling in her gut. The children looked upon each other with wide eyes, panic clawing at the edges of calm. Would this shake up everything she just built? And what was lurking behind those shattered pieces of glass? The storm was brewing, and somewhere among the darkness, a revelation awaited. But would they uncover it, or would it all come crashing down? The sound of shattering glass hung in the air like a ghost, lingering longer than it should. Maria's heart raced, echoing in her ears as she and the children exchanged anxious glances. The humor of the outdoor festivities shifted abruptly to something foreboding, like a shadow creeping across a sunlit day. What was that? One of the children whispered, a boy with tousled hair and fear in his eyes. I don't know, Maria replied, her voice steadier than she felt. She could see Mrs. Sinclair stiffen, the woman's expression darkening. You were always vengeful, wasn't she? Came an unexpected voice from behind them. A girl, maybe 10 years old, stepped forward, her small fists clenched tightly. Maria's breath hitched. The child was one of the lost ones, hidden behind walls of silence and despair. What do you mean? Maria asked, her heart racing as she felt the tension spike. Her. The girl pointed accusingly at Mrs. Sinclair. She hates us. She thinks we're a burden. The girl's voice cracked, the weight of her fearless accusation nearly paralyzing. Mrs. Sinclair narrowed her eyes, jaw tightening. You think you know anything about me? About sacrifice? But you don't care. The girl shouted back, her voice breaking. You just want to keep us in this darkness. Maria could feel a tremor of pure energy build in the atmosphere, the children gathering their courage, feeding off one another's strength, a direct contrast to the oppressive weight in the room. Maybe you're right, Maria said, stepping closer to the girl, her voice warm, inviting. But tonight, we can change that. Let us reclaim a moment in this house, right now. What do you say, huh? The children began to whisper among themselves, tentative at first, then louder, as if a spell were being cast. Hope sparked like a match struck in the dark, daring to cling onto the edges of their gloom. But Mrs. Sinclair stepped forward, cutting through the budding excitement. You think a few words can undo the years of disgrace? You're naive. Her voice boomed against the walls, still unyielding, though tremors of uncertainty leaked between her words. Then let us put you to the test. Maria declared, suddenly emboldened, a flame ignited within her. Let us show you that we can bring light back into this place, by not letting fear rule us anymore. We'll prove to you that they deserve more." Mrs. Sinclair's eyes widened at the challenge, resisting the urge to recoil. Maria pressed on, desperation mixing with determination. "Let them laugh. Let them dance. Just for tonight. It's not naive to believe in magic, Mrs. Sinclair. It's simply human." A flicker of hesitation crossed Mrs. Sinclair's expression once more, perhaps doubt or a glimmer of something long buried. Maria sensed it, and it propelled her forward. The wild laughter outside echoed louder, weaving through the cracks of the manor like a siren's call. Then, from behind them, came the unmistakable sound of smothered snickers and soft chortles, small hands covering timid mouths as the children from afar joined in whispers, their eyes glinting with mischief. The room was shifting, bending under the pressure of hope. As the atmosphere thickened, a thunderous crack of lightning illuminated the space, followed immediately by a tumultuous rumbling. The very foundations of the manor shook. What had once felt like a mausoleum was now alive, responding to the charged emotions spilling forth, and then, through the chaos, another sound arose, a faint whimper, a low, sorrowful note that cut through everything. It was the heart-wrenching sound of someone crying, desperate and sad. Turning towards the noise, Maria's heart dropped. "What now?" she muttered under her breath. She could feel the weight of the room pressing down, its shadows growing deeper, far more than the nightfall outside. What horrors lay hidden under the floorboards of this mansion? Who was behind the latest cry echoing off the walls? As dread curled in her stomach, Maria clenched her fists. The night was unraveling in ways she hadn't anticipated, and the stakes had never been higher. Maria's chest tightened as she shifted her gaze toward the source of the crying. It was like an echo of despair clawing its way through the walls, dark and relentless. The children's faces were a tapestry of fear and curiosity, their wide eyes searching for something, anything, to hold on to. "Over there," said a girl with tangled braids, pointing toward the corner of the room where shadows coiled like tendrils, drawing closer. The sobs intensified, muffled yet raw, reverberating through the air, knocking the breath from Maria's lungs. "We need to help whoever it is," Maria said, her voice barely above a whisper. The children nodded, eyes alight with a mix of solemnity and curiosity. This was more than a mere party now, it felt like the night's true purpose had unveiled itself. "Stay close," she commanded, instinctively stepping forward. As they approached, the sobs grew louder, more desperate, filling the expanse of the once grand parlor. What had they stumbled into? Then, with a crackling clap of thunder that shook the ground beneath their feet, a flicker of light revealed a small figure hunched low in the shadows. The air was thick, weighed down by the sound and the sheer tension clinging to Maria's skin. The girl, no older than the children beside her, was clearly lost in her own torment. She had hair the color of oil, lank and stringy, and her clothes hung loosely around her slender frame. "Please, don't leave me," she whispered between choking sobs. "Are you okay? We're here to help." Maria knelt down, cautious but desperately reaching toward the girl, who flinched as if preparing to be struck. Fear and distrust flickered behind sunken eyes, a mirror of hurt no child should ever bear. "Help? No one helps," the girl choked out, her voice trembling as she buried her face in her hands. "They only want to forget." "Who do you mean?" Maria pressed, trying to piece together the threads of this nightmare. "We won't forget you. Please, tell us what is happening." The girl raised her eyes, sparking a glimpse of hope in the midst of her despair. "The stories they don't tell you what happens when it all goes dark. They silence us, make us invisible." Lightning flashed again, illuminating Mrs. Sinclair's stiff figure. The woman seemed frozen in place, an unforgiving sentinel of a past she couldn't escape. But the fear that had hardened her heart now melted away under the weight of the girl's pain. "I never wanted," Mrs. Sinclair started but faltered. The words hung between them, a fragile bridge over turbulent waters. Maria turned back to the girl. "You're strong. You can tell us. We need to know how to stand against this darkness." The girl drew a shaky breath, wiping her tears on her sleeve. There's a secret in the house, something hidden in the walls. If you can find it, maybe we can escape. A hush fell over the group, the children gravitating toward her, eyes wide in disbelief. Escape? What haunted truth lay locked away, waiting for someone brave enough to face it? Seized by newfound determination, Maria straightened. Then we'll find it. Together. Are you sure? A boy murmured, glancing at the shadows creeping closer around them. But Maria could hardly process fear anymore. Every heartbeat surged with purpose. Absolutely. Fear can't hold us back. Not tonight. And then, the faintest creak echoed from the floorboards, causing everyone to freeze. The sound, almost alive, lingered and twisted around them. Did you hear that? Ms. Sinclair whispered, her voice now tinged with uncommon vulnerability. We need to find out where it's coming from, Maria urged, nodding toward a particularly dark corner of the room. Time slipped away as they ventured deeper into the unknown, propelled by both fear and a flickering flame of hope. With apprehension painting their features, they took the first cautious steps toward an unseen truth. But what awaited them in the darkness? What would they uncover underneath the facade of this grand old house? The night held its breath, and under its shadow might lay answers or perhaps even greater horrors. The darkness thickened as they reached the corner, shadows twisting and writhing like serpents. It was as if the house itself was alive, guiding them toward an unsettling truth buried in its depths. Maria felt a chill creep up her spine, but the girl's trembling words anchored her resolve. She had to press on. The children followed closely, their tiny hands clasped together, their breaths audible as they shared the same unspoken fear. Maria motioned for everyone to pause, scanning the surroundings. It was then she noticed a faint outline against the wall, a shape barely perceptible in the half-light, the outline of a door, or perhaps a hidden panel. Here, she said, her voice edged with excitement and anxiety. Ignoring the instinct to hesitate, she stepped closer. Wait! The girl cried, the fear in her eyes suddenly flaring up. No! Don't touch it! But it was too late. With a swift motion, Maria pushed against the wooden surface. The door groaned as it swung open, revealing absolute darkness behind it. An icy gust rushed out, as if the house was exhaling a long-held secret. Stay here, Maria urged the children, inching forward into the pitch. They hesitated for a second before nodding, brushing against one another in a silent pact of bravery. In the cavernous silence beyond the door, every creak of wood echoed in her ears. With each step, dread and excitement twisted her stomach, forcing her to question whether this was bravery or folly. And then she stumbled upon something solid, smooth and cold beneath her fingers. Her heart raced as she felt a series of objects arranged carefully, a collection of boxes, each entombed in dust. What is this? She whispered, half to herself and half to the watching children. Treasure. One of them chirped, his voice a mix of trepidation and thrill. A sudden gust of wind swirled through the space, rattling loose objects and sending a shiver down her spine. Maria palmed the edge of one dust-coated box, its surface etched with delicate carvings. Her fingers trembled. Then, a whisper reached her ears, chilling yet familiar. Help me! A bolt of fear shot through Maria as she turned back. The girl who had been crying was now standing just outside the opening, her eyes vast pools of sorrow. They don't want you to know. They'll come if you don't leave now. Who will come? Maria asked, her throat tightening with uncertainty. We need to understand. But the girl shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. The darkness, it knows what you want. It won't let you go. You have to trust me. A pounding began, the sound of footsteps echoing from deep within the house, getting louder. It was an ominous rhythm, a heavy footfall that rattled the very foundations they stood upon. Panic surged within the children, a few stepped backward, their faces pale with dread. There's no time. Maria yelled, urgency flooding her voice. We have to go. Yet her feet were glued to the spot, something inside her urging her to stay. The potential of what lay within the boxes tugged at her curiosity. Were they secrets, or worse, a trap? "Maria, please!" one of the kids cried, grabbing her arm, pulling her back toward the faint light. The footsteps grew nearer. Just then, an eerie voice slithered through the air, low and menacing. "Maria, you shouldn't have come." The house trembled, a low rumble making the shadows dance. They needed to escape, to flee the grasping darkness before it consumed them all. But Maria felt a pull, a connection to whatever truth lay in those boxes. Something was hidden, something vital. "Grab onto each other!" she shouted, breaking the spell of hesitation, but as they turned to flee, the door slammed shut with a deafening bang, trapping them inside the unknown. Desperation flooded the room, and the children clutched each other, their frightened breaths mingling with Maria's rising dread. Then darkness enveloped them. "Who are you?" Maria demanded, as the whispers grew louder, surrounding them. "Your reckoning is just beginning," the voice echoed, the shadows closing in, wrapping around them like a shroud, and in that moment, everything shifted. The air grew thick with dread, and Maria felt the weight of a secret that had waited far too long to be revealed. She had opened the door to danger, but to what end? What greater horrors lurked in the shadows beyond their reach? And could they escape before being swallowed whole? The darkness pressed against them, thick and suffocating, turning breath into an effort. Maria's heart pounded like a drum as the shadows swept around them, a swirling tempest gnawing at her resolve. The children's whimpers filled the air, small voices laced with fear, echoing the dread growing in her chest. "Stay close," she warned, a tremor betraying her determination. She could barely make out their wide, frightened eyes in the gloom, feeling their terror seep into her bones. "Maria, what's happening?" one of the boys whispered, his voice shaking as much as his fingers clutched at her sleeve. "Nothing," she lied, trying to summon courage that fizzled at her fingertips. "Just hold on." Suddenly, the whispers surged, a cacophony of voices rising like a tide. "Help me, help us!" They swirled around her, and Maria pressed her hands to her ears, desperate to block the sound. But it was too late. The words slithered into her mind, invasive and probing, igniting a shallow flicker of fear. She tried to focus, to find the source, but the darkness twisted around her. A dull ache throbbed in her temples as she summoned every ounce of strength to keep the children rooted. Then everything shifted. The whispers tapered off, silence hanging heavy as if the house itself held its breath. "Maria," a voice called softly from behind. It was the girl with sorrowful eyes, now stepping forward out of the shadows. "You have to listen. They're angry because you're here." "Please, we can't stay," Maria said urgently, her eyes darting back toward where the door had been. But the door was gone, swallowed by the oppressive shadows. "We need to find a way out." "No. It's too late now," the girl's gaze was haunted, hollow. "You opened the door. They're waiting for you, for all of us." A chill ran through Maria at the revelation, words sinking in. "Who are they?" But before the girl could answer, a monstrous roar erupted from the darkness, reverberating off the walls and rattling the floor beneath them. The children shrieked, a chorus of panic filling the air, and instinctively, Maria pulled them closer. "We're trapped," another child cried, desperation bleeding through every syllable. "Shoo," Maria urged, scanning the dark again, her mind racing for solutions even as fear painted the corners of her vision. "There has to be something here," she murmured, then, out of the unfathomable blackness, another form emerged. It was large, shifting, and spectral, shrouded in shadows that flickered like flames. A figure with glowing eyes regarded them. "Why have you come?" The voice was deep, jagged, cutting through their fear like a knife. "You're not meant to be here." Maria's instinct screamed for her to run, but her legs felt rooted. "We just wanted to help," she managed, the words tasting like ash in her mouth. "We didn't mean to disturb you." Help? The figure echoed, tilting its head in a grotesque semblance of curiosity. What help can you offer when you don't even understand the darkness you've awakened? A tremor ran down her spine, chilling her to the core. The air thickened, pressing against her lungs. Panic surged within her as the hands of the children squeezed tighter, voices quaking in rising fear. I just need to know. Maria's resolve faltered, but she pushed on. What do you want? Everything. The figure's eyes glimmered like stars in the black, an abyss of hunger swirling within. And soon, you will too. With that, the darkness began to shift, twisting and undulating in a sinister dance. It lurked closer, stretching out sinewy tendrils that reached for them, hungry for their essence. Run! Maria shouted, instinct kicking in. They tore through the dark, the children flinging themselves into the void, clinging together in an effort to escape, but as they stumbled forward, breathless and terrified, the ground beneath them split open, revealing a deep chasm of darkness, more terrifying than anything they had encountered. We can't. One child cried. We'll fall. Then we hold on. Maria screamed. Together. And just as they prepared to leap into the void, the whispers surged again, louder this time. Threatening to rip apart the fragile unity they had. Let go. Let go. Let go. The voices shrieked, a monstrous spider weaving a snare around their hearts. The children hesitated, fear gripping them fiercely. And in that moment, as the tendrils of darkness reached for them, a single thought pierced through Maria's mind: what would they leave behind if they fell into the abyss? The answer echoed in the howling darkness, and they teetered at the edge, hearts racing, about to plunge into unknown horrors. But then came another voice, a glimmer of hope, slicing through despair. Maria. We're stronger together. But would they be strong enough to survive the truth that awaited them in the dark? The shadows writhed and the ground trembled as the chasm yawned wide, ready to draw them in. Would they leap into the unknown or find the strength to fight back against the darkness? A heavy silence fell around them, the anguished cries of the children replaced by an eerie stillness that seemed to throb in time with Maria's heart. Together. Maria whispered, summoning all her strength. She looked into the faces around her, wide eyes, trembling lips, and shaky breaths. They were on the brink of despair, but she couldn't let them go. Not now. We can do this, she urged. On the count of 3. 1, 2. But before she could finish, the dark tendrils lunged, grasping against them like the icy grip of death itself. Maria felt a coldness seep into her bones, the shadows threatening to drag her into the void. She had to act fast. 3. She shouted, and with one swift motion, she grabbed the hands of the children, ready to leap into the unknown. Just as they moved, the world around her erupted in chaos. A blinding light flashed, illuminating the dark. It felt as if the walls of the house were screaming, a mournful dirge echoing around them. The children flinched, their hands tightening around Maria's. She could feel their fear radiating, almost overwhelming her. And then, as if the light was a solid force, it ripped through the darkness, splitting it apart like a curtain. For a moment, the wailing whispers dulled, drawing back into the shadows. Run! Maria shouted, pulling the children towards the glimmer. The path opened, revealing a narrow corridor leading away from the chasm, arcs of light flickering overhead like fireflies. They dashed forward, the heat of the light filling them with a sense of urgency. Every instinct screamed at her to go faster, to escape the clutches of darkness still slithering at their heels. Faster! One of the girls cried, pushing herself harder. Maria could hear the panic in her voice, a high-pitched echo slicing through the silence. It's coming! They raced down the corridor, the glowing strips pulsating around them, each pulse reinvigorating their hope even as shadows crept desperately behind. But soon, they found themselves at another crossroad, one path leading into swirling shadows and the other into light that beckoned like salvation. What now? The boy who had first spoken asked, panting, his eyes darting between the two paths. Maria felt a stab of doubt. Trust your instincts, she barked. Which way feels right? Time crawled in that moment. They were caught between the foreboding dark and the blinding light. I want to go towards the light, the girl said, stepping forward, resolve hardening her voice. She gripped Maria's hand tighter, her face set with determination. I want to let it take us. Maria nodded, heart pounding in agreement. Then we go, she declared, turning towards the glowing path. They surged forward, light enveloping them in warm tendrils, but the darkness didn't vanish. She could feel the weight of it looming behind them, a reminder of the horrors they had just faced. An unearthly growl ripped through the air as they charged forward, as if the darkness was consumed by rage at their escape. It wasn't over yet. Just as they rounded a corner, the corridor opened to a vast chamber, filled with towering walls shimmering with strange symbols that twisted and writhed. It felt like entering another world, one teetering on the edge of mystery and terror. The children gasped, their fear momentarily forgotten. But then came the whispers again, rising in anger, relentlessly penetrating even this beautifully warped space. Flee, return, join us, they chanted in a chorus, a haunting melody that licked at the edges of sanity. The ground beneath them started to tremble, the symbols glowing brighter, casting harsh shadows that turned into creeping shapes creeping closer. Maria's resolve hardened. They had come too far to turn back now. Stay close, she shouted again, a desperate plea as she scanned the expanse. We will find a way out. But could they escape the shadow's reach? Would they dare unravel the secrets of the chamber before them? As she stepped forward into the unknown, a single question echoed in her mind: what awaited them in this illuminated horror? The answer slithered closer. And it was hungry. The ground trembled violently beneath their feet, each pulse sending a jolt of fear up Maria's spine. She could hear the whispers growing more insistent, swirling around them, cutting through the beaten air like sharpened knives. Flee, return, the voices seemed almost alive, menacing and painful, as if they fed off their doubt and fear. Choose. A new voice echoed within the chamber, startling Maria. It shattered the ominous rhythm of the whispers, sparking a brief moment of clarity amid chaos. The children huddled closer, eyes wide with terror as they searched Maria's face for reassurance. What do you mean, choose? She demanded, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. Choose to live or join the shadows. The words wrung themselves from the very walls, thick and oily, slathered in dreadful allure. The air grew suffocating, and Maria's chest felt tight as a vice. She wanted to scream, wanted to deny what they were being forced to confront, yet beneath her fear, a flicker of determination ignited. She was going to let them succumb to the darkness. With her heart hammering in her chest, she raised her voice again, a beacon through the fog of despair. No. We choose life. We choose to keep fighting. The whispering faltered for a fraction of a second, and in that moment, the symbols adorning the walls began to dim. The tension in the air shimmered, thickening like smoke, as if the very shadows recoiled. Flee, flee, they wailed, retreating in muted protest. But the path was still shrouded in confusion, twisting howling winds snaking around their ankles, threatening to drag them under. Quick! One of the boys said, panic creeping back into his voice. We have to find an exit. Maria scanned the chamber fervently, feeling the weight of the darkness pressing against her. The light that had guided them here flickered, casting eerie silhouettes on the walls. For the first time, she questioned where the glow would take them. Would it lead them deeper into despair, or toward salvation? Look! The girl beside her exclaimed, pointing at a section of the wall shimmering with an azure hue. What's that? Pulsing with a rhythm of its own, the spot pulsed like a heartbeat, beckoning them closer. Maria felt drawn to it, a magnetic pull that made her heart race. The symbols around it twisted and writhed, shifting like serpents. We have to try. They approached the wall, trembling with both fear and hope. What if it's a trap? One child murmured, glancing back nervously. We've come this far. Maria urged, stealing the resolve in her voice. We can't turn back now. The symbols glowed brighter as they surged forward, and without thinking, she pressed her hand against the luminous wall. Instantly, an electric shock surged through her, coursing up her arm. The chamber exploded with light, and the children shrieked as the shadows recoiled. Maybe this was a way out. The thought ignited a surge of energy in Maria. But as they moved closer, the glowing symbols twisted in recognition, curling around the children like a predator tightening its grip. Join us, the whispers returned, clearer now, an ominous warning wrapped in a promise. Then, in an instant, the world warped as reality crumbled around them, dragging Maria and the children into an overwhelming vortex of color and noise. Within that chaos, she couldn't shake the feeling of foreboding. The whispers now seemed like a chorus of souls trapped, colliding with their resolve. What awaited them on the other side of the glow? Would they escape the dark, or would they find themselves ensnared even deeper? As everything spun wildly, uncertainty clawed at Maria's insides, and in that heart-stopping moment, she realized, not all choices lead to freedom, some could lead to a nightmare far worse than they had already faced. The swirling colors receded like a tide, leaving behind a scene surprisingly tranquil, yet harrowing. Maria found herself in a small room, adorned with dusty bookshelves crammed with ancient tomes and peculiar artifacts. The children were scattered around her, their eyes wide with uncertainty. Where are we? The boy asked, shrinking back against the wall. I don't know, Maria admitted, wiping a trembling hand across her forehead. But we have to stay together. The air hummed differently here, as if charged with some long-buried energy. But there was also a gnawing fear, a reminder that the darkness they'd escaped could still reach out to claim them. Suddenly, a pair of grotesque figures emerged from the shadows, their forms blending into the dim light. The ghosts of children long forgotten and lost floated toward them, their hollow eyes filled with sorrow. You should not have come, one whispered, its voice like a chilled wind lost among the branches. No! Maria shouted, stepping protectively in front of the kids. We are not afraid of you. We know the shadows, they cling to broken hearts, another ghost said, sorrow thick in its tone. You are but children. What hope do you have? Maria's chest tightened, a lump forming in her throat. What could she say to them? They were right. But hope flickered within her, a dim possibility hung on the edges of her heart. We fight for each other, she declared, feeling the courage swell like a rising tide. We have come this far. We're not going back. The ghosts paused, shifting uncomfortably as if considering her words. And then, something remarkable happened. The haunted looks on their faces softened, just for a moment. But can you bear the weight? They echoed, their voices trembling. Can you bear what you must face? In that instant, Maria understood. The shadows were not merely adversaries, they were a reflection of the sorrow and despair that bound their hearts. Together, we can bear anything. The children took her words to heart, clustering around her, their hands linked in firm resolve. Just then, the walls of the room trembled, and the floor beneath them vibrated. Join us echoed ominously through the room, but this time Maria felt it extract power from them rather than engulf it. Each child's heart echoed a rhythm, their unity stronger than any lingering darkness. Come! She urged, directing them toward a door at the far end, its form glimmering as if illuminated from within. We can face whatever is ahead. The children nodded, a fierce determination igniting in their spirits. They rushed towards the portal, but just as they reached out for the handle, it twitched violently as shadows slithered in, lashing out hungrily. Flee! The specters warned, their whispers rising in agony. But Maria stood firm, rooted by a newfound confidence. No! We will not give in. With a sweeping motion, she gripped the doorknob. The shadows danced around her, snarling and twisting, but Maria pushed through the veil of fear. We choose love. We choose to fight. She exclaimed, and the children echoed her words, their united voices cutting through the darkness. As they turned the knob, a breathtaking light erupted from the door, engulfing the shadows. It pulsed with warmth, wrapping around them like a protective embrace. With one powerful push, they flung the door open, spilling into a world so bright that it pierced through the vast void behind them. Delighted laughter surrounded them as they stumbled into a sunlit garden, blooming with vibrant colors. The air was fragrant with flowers, the grass cushy underfoot. The once haunted specters flickered and dissolved in the brilliance, their anguished whispers silenced by joy. The children looked up, their eyes wide with wonder. Maria felt her heart swell. They were free. They had transformed what was once weighed down by sadness into a sanctuary of hope. We did it! Cheered the girl with tangled braids, her laughter ringing like chimes in the gentle breeze. Yes, we did. Maria beamed, tears of relief glistening in her eyes. No longer shadows of neglect, the children stood united, their spirits soaring high as they were embraced by the warmth of life blooming around them. Nor were they just children, they were survivors. They had faced the darkness head-on, and the shades of despair had melted away, replaced by a future filled with connection, laughter, and love. They had chosen life, and in doing so, they had rewritten their stories. Later that day, as twilight painted the garden in soft hues, Maria gathered the children under the soaring branches. From now on, we fill our days with light and stories, she told them, and when we encounter darkness again, we will face it together. And somehow, in the depths of their hearts, they all knew that they could face any darkness that dared approach. So, after this incredible journey, remember, the light shines brightest in the darkest of times. Be your own light, believe in the magic of hope and love, and just like that, the chapter concluded, but the story lived on. Now, don't wait even one more second. Subscribe immediately to our channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to show your support and feed the algorithm. Let us grow this amazing community together. And don't forget, flood the comments section with your thoughts, reactions, and theories about the ending. I want to hear from you. Finally, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this powerful conclusion. Your engagement means the world, and only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.